The full truth has now emerged about the United States' special operation to overthrow the Maduro regime in Venezuela, following Nicolas Maduro's arrest. United States President Donald Trump stated that the United States will take full control of Venezuela's vast oil reserves and will bring in American companies to invest billions of dollars in restoring the country's devastated oil infrastructure. But don't jump to conclusions here, because later United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio explained that America itself doesn't need this oil. The main goal was to drive the Russians, Chinese, and Iranians out of Venezuela. I'll explain this logic in this episode. In addition, I should note that Venezuela has huge oil reserves of 303 billion barrels, which is about 1/5 of all the world's reserves. At the same time, Trump stated that it is the United States of America that is taking full control of all of Venezuela until proper elections are held there. It is already known that the very same Marco Rubio will take over the management of Venezuela, and he is currently assembling a team and preparing a program to govern the neighboring country. But the main issue is oil, and it seems that Trump is no longer hiding the fact that they wanted to gain access to it, and at the same time deprive the Russians, Chinese, and Iranians of influence in this region. But there is a nuance in this story that is definitely worth discussing. Especially since seizing Venezuelan oil gives Donald Trump more leverage in his confrontation with China and Russia.
Don't let yourselves be convinced that the Americans only want the oil. The Americans just want their riches. I mean, I asked those people, what do they think the Russians and the Chinese wanted all this time? The arepa recipe? Impossible.
Impossible. His name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave any comment under this episode. This really helps a lot with promoting the content on YouTube, and I would be grateful to you for that. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel Pichi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, right after the announcement about the arrest of Nicolas Maduro, Donald Trump declared that he is not only no longer the president of Venezuela, but that the United States will be running the government of Venezuela at the moment. But the important question, of course, was about oil. Trump's quote, "We are going to instruct our largest oil companies in the United States, the biggest in the world, to invest billions of dollars in restoring the heavily damaged oil infrastructure of Venezuela." And right here, today, Marco Rubio immediately states in an interview with national broadcasting company News that Americans don't need Venezuelan oil, saying that the United States already has enough of its own black gold. The main reason is to prevent Venezuela's oil industry from being controlled by America's adversaries, primarily China, Russia, and Iran. Marco Rubio asks, why does China need Venezuelan oil? Why does Russia need this Venezuelan oil? Why does Iran need it? They're not even on this continent. According to him, the United States cannot allow Venezuela to become an operational center for Iran, Russia, Hezbollah, China, or Cuban intelligence agents. So basically, my assumptions here were correct. Indeed, besides gaining access to oil, they are now also completely expelling Russians, Chinese, and Iranians from the Western Hemisphere. If you look at the situation objectively, this oil sector reform initiated by the United States of America could ultimately make Venezuela a much larger oil supplier. To create opportunities for Western oil companies and become a new production source, this is possible. This could also restrain overall price growth, although lower prices might discourage some American companies from extracting oil there at all, but the advantages here outweigh the disadvantages. Nevertheless, even if international access is fully restored tomorrow, it could take years and incredible costs to fully resume oil production in Venezuela. The Venezuelan state oil and gas company Petróleos de Venezuela, Sociedad Anónima, says that its pipelines haven't been modernized in 50 years, and the cost of upgrading the infrastructure to return to the peak production levels that existed before the socialists, before Hugo Chavez, would be $58 billion. And it's important to remember that before Hugo Chavez, such investments weren't a problem at all, because Western companies were lining up to invest their money in Venezuela's oil industry. There was absolutely no problem. But then Hugo Chavez comes and decides to nationalize everything, saying that the entire oil industry belongs to the people, but in reality he takes it for himself. As a result, Hugo Chavez and after him, Nicolas Maduro. They basically plundered the entire oil industry of Venezuela, which was really built with money from American and generally Western investors. And here's the mystery. How can a country with the largest oil reserves and not just any oil? I'll explain later why it couldn't be successful and wealthy. The fact is that Venezuela really does have the largest proven oil reserves in the world, but its potential far exceeds Venezuela's actual production. Today, Venezuela produces only about 1 million barrels of oil per day, which is less than 0.8 of the world's total crude oil production. Imagine the largest reserves being less than 1 on the entire market. Moreover, this is less than half the amount of production the country had before Maduro came to power in 2013, and less than a third of the 3.5 million barrels that Venezuela produced before the socialist regime came to power. Overall, international sanctions against the Venezuelan government and the deep economic crisis have contributed to the decline of the country's oil industry, but the lack of investment and technical maintenance also plays a significant role. Imagine, a country that seems to be so rich in oil hasn't modernized its pipelines in 50 years, Venezuela's energy infrastructure is falling apart, and its oil production capacity has significantly decreased in recent years. Venezuela simply doesn't produce enough oil for it to make a big difference on the global market. And gradually everyone started getting used to the fact that Venezuela has a lot of oil, but you can't really count on it. While Venezuela lagged, other players took over the market. This year, oil prices are being held back due to concerns about oversupply. Organization of the petroleum exporting countries has increased production, but demand has somewhat decreased as the global economy continues to recover. Venezuela is experiencing difficulties with inflation and affordability after the price shock caused by the pandemic and so on. Therefore, there are concerns that it might already be too late to revive the Venezuelan oil sector. It's still important to consider the situation broadly, especially given the United States-China confrontation. The oil that Venezuela has is heavy sulfurous oil, and it requires special equipment and a high level of technical capability to extract. The Americans have these capabilities. Just let them into Venezuela, and believe me, they'll handle everything. As Mark Rubio and Zavalov state, the United States already has its own oil. But the United States, the world's largest oil producer, has light, low-sulfur oil that's suitable for gasoline production, but that's about it. But heavy, high-sulfur oil, like Venezuelan oil, is crucial for certain products made during refining, including diesel fuel, asphalt, fuel for factories, and other heavy equipment. Diesel fuel, by the way, is currently in short supply around the world, largely because of sanctions on Venezuelan oil, because they have a special kind of heavy oil there. And now Trump is getting his hands on a real gold mine. Because yes, America has enough of its own oil, but it's light and Americans need heavy oil. As a result, unblocking Venezuelan oil could be especially beneficial for the United States of America. Venezuela is close by and its oil is cheap. Here's a surprise for you. At one time, most American oil refineries were built specifically to process heavy Venezuelan oil, and they use Venezuelan oil much more efficiently compared to American oil. So restarting the entire production cycle will be very easy. Most American refineries were initially built for heavy Venezuelan oil. And then Trump comes out and says, quote, they in Venezuela were producing almost nothing compared to We are going to allow our largest oil companies in the United States to come in, spend billions of dollars, repair the heavily damaged infrastructure, and start bringing profit to this country. Well, and here's another point in favor of Donald Trump. Experts are confident that United States intervention in Venezuela will only slightly affect energy prices around the world. Because so far, it doesn't seem like anyone in Venezuela is seriously speaking out against this. And it has already become known that the key administrative role in American governance of Venezuela after the overthrow of Nicolas Maduro will be taken by United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has always actively criticized the Venezuelan leader and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez. In addition, the United States President did not rule out the deployment of American troops in this country, as well as launching a second wave of strikes, but added that this is unlikely to be necessary. Currently, Trump's national security team, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller, and United States Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, is working on the structure of governance in Venezuela. I would like to note that the Supreme Court of Venezuela has already appointed Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as the interim head of state, and she has already condemned, as she says, the United States military aggression, calling Nicolas Maduro the only legitimate president of the country. Although earlier Trump's team said that she was ready to make a deal with the Americans, Trump replied that if Rodriguez does what she is told, then American military presence in Venezuela will not be necessary. That's a subtle hint. Trump also rejected the participation of the Venezuelan opposition, represented by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Maria Corina Machado, in the future governance of Venezuela. In general, as they say, all the secrets are already out in the open here. Basically, no one is really hiding behind the fight against narcoterrorism anymore, although this is also a problem that the Americans are actively fighting. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like, friends. To support this YouTube channel, donate using the provided links and details. In the description of this video it says support the channel Alexi Pecci. Pick whatever format works best for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.